Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting it in just a moment on this lovely Friday afternoon/evening or morning, depending on where you are in the world.
Come on, still says it's waiting.
I see it live here on my end.
Oh, okay. It's weird. I had a refresh to make
Huh.
it show up.
Strange.
All right, let me get the notes up. I close that. All right, I'm now recording.
I'm now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 364 for April 11th, 2025. Hey everyone, Deanna Rubino here, joined with Zac Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. This week, we'll be going through, the Microsoft 50th anniversary event that happened in Redmond. Just talk about my experiences there and some of the thoughts of the new Copilot stuff, which is actually now rolling out, which is kind of cool. That'll segue us nicely into the what's next for Copilot and Copilot OS. And then Microsoft out of nowhere announced a special 50th anniversary Surface laptop. So we'll kind of go through the details on that and how you could possibly get one, even though it's going to be very difficult. Then we'll also go to the latest on Windows 11 news there. Briefly go touch on tariffs and how it's going to affect the PC and gaming industry, because it's already having ripple effects that we'll kind of go through. And then we'll talk about the rumor that Microsoft is considering more job cuts, which ties into the whole slowing of the economy and some other trends that are going on in big industry these days, which I'll put into some context. Anyway, Zac, how are you doing on this actual Friday? We're actually doing it on a Friday.
Yes, I'm not too bad. The weekend is finally upon us. I'm very excited to relax. Before we get started on today's episode, I do want to make a quick announcement. I've heard your requests. Lots of you who listen to the podcast, but who not live. So those of you listening on Spotify or a podcast platform of choice after the fact, or even the video podcast, but not when we're broadcasting. I've heard you guys want an opportunity to send in your own questions, and so I am giving you an opportunity to do that. We've set up a new email address, podcast@windowscentral.com. You can send us questions to that via email, and starting next week, every end of the episode or every so often, we'll do a section towards the end of the episode where we bring in some reader questions that have been sent to us at that email, and we'll do our best to answer them. So this is an opportunity for everybody who isn't able to tune in live to submit questions, because I know we obviously do the Q&A section at the end of every episode live most weeks. That will still continue. We'll still partake with people who tuned in live. But for those of you who don't, we are going to have a little section at the end of most episodes going forward where we do answer your questions if you send them to us at podcast@windowscentral.com. So yes, remember that email. If you have a question, throw it in the subject line, type in your question, send it to us. We will see it. We will triage and organize them for the episodes going forward. But yes, I'm good, Dan. How are you?
Not too bad. Also excited for the weekend. It's been a surprising long week, I think, because of all the tariff stuff and obviously a lot of drama happening in news these days. But and not only that, it's been ridiculously cold here, which is really getting frustrating. I kind of just want spring already.
Yeah.
But that's neither here or there. We can get right into the 50th anniversary Microsoft news. So I was in Redmond last week for literally 24 hours. I arrived on Thursday at 3 p.m., left Friday at 3 p.m. Always nice, though, to get out there. Microsoft it was a really nice event, and they always do have nice events, but this one was kind of cool. It was, at first it was mentioned it was on the cricket field. And I was like, wait, it's going to be like a graduation ceremony where we're all outside in folding chairs, but it wasn't like that at all. Instead, they had a big tent set up, including like carpet on the inside, and it was just like fully stocked. So it felt like being on the inside. They had nice chairs set up. They always treat media well. We had power supply, which was an interesting feat for them to accomplish in such a setup. So I give them credit for that. But it's always helpful. They're one of the few organizers that will actually give media power supplies, which is kind of funny because I technically don't need it anymore with these new laptops that we have. I was using that ThinkPad X9, the new one, and it had no problem. I still plugged it in though, just because. But the whole setup was sort of like a late night talk show, which is pretty funny. So they had a live band that was playing, and then they had like a middle section that was like a stage entrance area, and then they had a talk show area with like a desk and seats and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun. There were some surprises, definitely, because I thought, I was like, Bill Gates should be there, Ballmer, and sure enough, we sat down, and no less than 10 feet from me, Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer came in and sat down. And so that was pretty cool to see them in person. Phil Spencer was also there with Xbox. So that was neat. And then what they did was, so the broadcast part that we all saw was, of course, talking about Copilot.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the protests and all that, which was definitely awkward for everyone. It was just, Mustafa was on stage talking about AI and Copilot, and all of a sudden he's getting shouted down. We're all just like looking at each other, giving side eyes, like awkward. Like, what do we do? But once that passed, it went on to the news. But then they stopped the broadcast, and then it was just another 90 minutes, basically, of Microsoft celebrating its 50th anniversary. And the reason why they didn't broadcast it was a lot of like inside jokes and humor, and it was really aimed at the employees of the company as a show for them versus kind of the rest of the world. But they had like recurring stuff. It was kind of cool. One person who works at Microsoft won a golden ticket, basically. And eventually they got to come out on stage. They didn't know, but Ballmer and Bill Gates and Satya Nadella were going to be there. And they got a photo op and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of fun too, because like Ballmer, all the CEOs went up one by one and basically did an interview where they were asked questions about the company and its history and how they acted as CEO and all that. Then eventually they had all three of them out on stage where they had a conversation, which was really kind of cool to see, right? It's kind of amazing that out of 50 years, they've only had 3 CEOs. That's actually a really impressive thing where, Apple, I get, is in a similar boat, but a lot of times with companies, you do see, shifting of CEOs every 5 to 10 years. But Microsoft's been kind of the exception there. Ballmer definitely joked around that eventually AI will be the CEO of Microsoft. That's actually probably not too far from the truth. We always talk about AI replacing, lower end jobs or, even coding, but there's no reason why AI couldn't be a good CEO in theory. In fact, he would probably make good decisions.
And there probably already are CEOs asking Copilot or Chat GPT questions and solutions about things that are presented to them already. Like, AI is probably already driving the decisions of many CEOs in tech.
Yeah. And, I think obviously the risk there, besides, is that AI probably isn't going to be very empathetic. So it's going to be like, profits are down 2%, lay off, this percentage of workforce. And I'm sure that, there'll be a board and all that to sign off on any decisions. But there's something to be said about the rationality of having that kind of someone in power making those decisions, even for investments, right? So kind of interesting stuff. I was hoping Ballmer would do something with the developers thing, and sure enough, he did. They got him to do his little dance. And then he even did a second one, which was, what was it, like 50 more years or something like that? He was shouting. He was joking around how his wife was going to be mad at him for doing this because obviously it's become a meme. He's a kind of a strange guy, but like in an endearing way. Passion. I think a lot of people, Yeah, I think a lot of people, who follow tech and are really smart can kind of relate to kind of his weird kind of awkwardness, but he's definitely passionate. Uh, it's always funny just seeing him and Gates together because they're
Mhm.
so different,
Yeah.
But I think that's why they worked well together, right? Uh, but he's always a great sport, and it's just always fun to see him on stage.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty awesome. If you haven't seen those, I do have those clips out on my Twitter feed. You can go check those out. So I did save it for posterity, but it was kind of fun.
I will say I didn't realize how much I missed Bulmer until the 50th, and then it just led me down like this path of just looking at old clips of Bulmer just being nuts. Essentially, it was a different Microsoft. You forget how sort of goofy Microsoft was from like 2005-ish, kind of all the way up to 2014, 2015 when he was in charge. He fronted a lot of events. He was there at the launch of Surface. He hosted Build one year, which was at the time quite incredible. Like the CEO never usually did that, especially Windows demos and stuff. It wasn't often you'd see the CEO actually do the hands-on demos on stage and stuff. I think I want to say Build 2013 or 2014 was that year where he was sort of just did the whole thing. I'm like, well, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But he you can't deny that I think one of his catchphrases is "I love this company," and I believe he did.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely was so passionate about everything they made, from Windows Phone all the way up to Xbox and Surface. He believed in all of it. And Azure, he's the one who's got Azure kicked off really under his regime. He made a lot of right decisions. He may have made some wrong decisions as well, but ultimately, I think his run for me is a highlight in Microsoft's 50 years. Since it's probably not fair to say Nadella's run has been boring, but it has been sensible. It has been a much more
it's a
sensible
good choice of
Microsoft.
words. Yeah.
And then obviously the Bill Gates era is controversial in a number of different ways for a number of different reasons. But yeah, I still think Ballmer's my favorite CEO.
He's definitely the most entertaining, that's for sure.
Yeah.
For our audience, some people praise him for Windows Phone, but also blame him for Windows Phone. I give him more praise than blame. The reason I give Bill Gates more blame, because that set in motion everything else that came after, right? Bill Gates didn't take it seriously by his own admission. He says it's one of his worst oversights during the rise. He's been saying for a couple of years now that they should have been Android, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What Android became, that should have been Microsoft's position. And it's true. They did have Windows Mobile, but it was getting old at that point. And then Android and iPhone came out, and Microsoft did shift to Windows Phone 7, which I give them all the credit in the world for being a really bold move, right? We always talk about that. There was Photon and then Windows Phone 7. Photon was a continuation of the design language of Windows Mobile. But they went with Windows Phone 7, which was just radically different and way cool. And it was just, I don't know, it seemed like it had so much potential. I don't know what else Ballmer necessarily could have done, but maybe Microsoft having its own phone would have helped, but I don't think they were there yet.
Yeah. I also think
hardware.
the platform reset between Windows Phone 7 and Windows Phone 8 was a giant misstep, and Phone 7 should have just been based on the NT kernel from the offset. The fact that that was probably the biggest misstep, because it was essentially a clean slate again from Windows Phone 8, only a year, 2 years after Windows Phone 7 had launched. And so all of that customer base you built up was basically for nothing. And so Microsoft didn't start in 2010; they started in 2012 with Windows Phone 8. Really?
Yeah. No, it's 100% correct. And one of the reasons why they did that was because the limitations they're running into with the kernel and everything was limiting them with hardware and what they were going to be able to do with those phones. New Bluetooth was coming out, new Wi-Fi was coming out, 4G, 5G was going to come out. And so that older system wasn't able to support it. But yeah, had they set in motion back in the day when Windows Mobile was out, really starting to push harder and have a dedicated operating system that was more future. That's the thing with Android and iOS. They were built from the ground up to be forward leaning. And so they just kept going. Whereas Microsoft had they were there first in a lot of ways, but they their system was getting old. They just weren't paying as much attention to it. And to be fair, if you look back, then their mobile stuff was really teeny compared to desktop OS, which was having its issues too. So, yeah. So I blame Bill Gates, because had he set it in motion, he set up everything, and they kind of were set up to fail. So Ballmer tried. He definitely believed in it. He had the 3 screens in the cloud initiative, which was really kind of cool. Anyways, but that was it. We all got a little tote bag with a Microsoft logo. We got a sticker and a baseball cap with a little mouse pointer, which was kind of fun. It was good stuff. I don't know. It was fun. It was nice seeing a lot of people there too.
Yeah. Is there any more you want to touch on in regards to the protest? Because when we did the podcast last week, we didn't know much about what that we didn't know the whole story, but I think we sort of do now. We do know that it was a Microsoft employee, and it wasn't just one. There was another protester later in the event, but this was after the Copilot stream. So there was a protester during the Copilot stream, and then there was another one during the sort of 50th celebration after the stream, and then I think there was 30 or so protesters outside the venue also there protesting the Israeli military's use of Microsoft technology in regards to AI. That's kind of what the point of the protest was. And Microsoft hasn't issued any official comment on it. They have since fired at least one or maybe both employees who were inside the venue, even though I think they both sent in their notice regardless. But they have been fired by Microsoft, and the company hasn't issued any official statements since then, and they probably won't, which is
well, they did mention that. I think in the letter or whatever, that acknowledging that that employee was fired was because they didn't express any remorse,
right,
or apologize for it. My thoughts of it when it was happening was like, listen, we're in the United States, freedom of speech reigns, and people are free to protest, and I encourage people, if they listen, it took guts to do what she did, right? Whether you agree with her or not is beside the point. And the fact is, to get up in front of all those people, while it's being broadcast and streamed all over the place, and it was her boss, basically. She worked in the AI division, and to take a very controversial position, most people would not have the guts to do that if they believed passionately in it. And again, I'm not saying you have to agree with what she was saying, but it's still like she knew that there would be ramifications for those actions, and she still did it. And most people aren't that brave. So I give her all the credit in the world for that. But I also, when the company turns around and fires her, I'm also not surprised and not necessarily mad at Microsoft. They said that she could have raised these issues internally, which I think they had, but it's only going to go so far. And maybe had she kind of apologized, for it, or shown some remorse, they might have been a little bit more lenient and just like suspension or something. But I think it was, the company's 3 CEOs were right there, right? And it's like, it has to be kind of embarrassing for them. But that's the point of it, But hey, listen, as America is what we do here. So she's free to do that, and Microsoft's free to not employ her. So that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, it was interesting when it was happening on the stream, because obviously at the time we didn't know who it was, and we all wondered, did someone break in? Is there any security at the event? Did someone come running in? But no, it turned out that they were allowed to be there. They were employees. I think she worked for Microsoft Canada, and so she'd flown into Seattle or driven down to Seattle, depending on where she was in Canada, to attend the event, and she would have been allowed in. She had a blue badge, which is the Microsoft badge, employee badge. She had free reign of the event. So
we're kind of right in the heart of their campus. There's like really no way you could have snuck in, I don't think. But
I can read the email Microsoft did send to, I can't remember her name, I'm sorry. Ibtihal Abu Sad. I probably butchered that pronunciation. I do apologize. But here's the email Microsoft sent to her when they were firing her. They said, earlier today, you interrupted a speech by Microsoft AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman during the company's 50th anniversary event in Redwood, Seattle, by yelling and finger pointing at the CEO before a live audience of thousands of attendees and making hostile, unprovoked, and highly inappropriate accusations against the CEO, the company, and Microsoft generally. While the CEO remained calm and attempted to de-escalate the matter, your conduct was so aggressive that you had to be escorted out of the room by security. The company has concluded that your misconduct was designed to gain notoriety and cause maximum disruption to this highly anticipated event. It is also concerning that you have not apologized to the company, and in fact, you should have shown no remorse for the full effect that your actions have had and will have. So that's what they sent to her after the fact. But like we said, she had already submitted her 2 weeks notice. She knew she was done. She was getting out of there anyway, and so. It is what it is. Microsoft. It is a fascinating look at the internal sort of ongoings when something like this happens, because this is an internal email which I think was shared with The Verge. This wasn't supposed to be published, and so, I mean, I think Microsoft probably knew it would be published, but yeah.
I mean, and so it makes the comment that you shouldn't really stab your employer in the back. You review internally or quit, then argue against your company. You don't do it while accepting their paychecks. That's fair if you were expecting to continue to work there. I'm 99% sure she was falling on the sword and being knowing she was going to lose her job, or and she did. She submitted her resignation like that day. So I think she knew she was ready to go out, like a champ, right? And just go out there and make that impact, knowing that she was going to be laid off or she was going to quit. Had she done that and then expected that they were just going to be like, okay, don't do that again, then I think you would be right. But she was clearly making a stance and fully accepting the fact that she was no longer going to work there. So I think, again, if you're going to make a self-sacrifice like that, then, by all means, why not? Like, this is, again, it is America. We have free speech here. You don't owe your company anything, by the way. You are an employee of them. They're not your friends. They're not your family. They're not a god. There is no reason why you have to give any sort of honor to your company, especially since most corporations do not reciprocate that back to their own employees. Exactly. And we've seen that even with Microsoft and how they've laid off people. Sure, it's tough decisions you can argue that they had to make, but they also let go a lot of people who, maybe shouldn't have been let go. So I don't agree with this fidelity towards corporations. I think that's a stupid mindset to have in America. Maybe if you're in China, that's your viewpoint, but not in the United States.
And so that is that. We should probably move on to the Copilot stuff, because Dan, I know you've actually had a chance to try some of it now. I think they gave you some hands-on time at the event, and I think you've also got it at home as well, right? At least some of it.
Yeah. So this is a little infuriating, but I get it too. So some of these new features that are coming to Copilot come first to Copilot Pro users, so those who are paying for it. And that's part of the incentive to pay Microsoft. And I've argued in the past that they should have more incentives for the pro users to justify that cost. So some of the things we've seen, were already pro users, were already kind of experiencing them. But the thing is, if you're a pro user or you're not a pro user, like, you don't know which is which. Right. So if you're a non-pro user, you actually don't know what you're missing unless someone like us covers it and tells you, like, hey, there's this new feature out there. And then you're like, because this was the case with one of the new things that we talked about just a couple of weeks ago was setting Copilot as a default assistant on Android, and why that's not a thing. And lo and behold, Microsoft did it. And it was only available for pro users, although I believe it is now rolling out to free users. And that's how all this stuff works. So although the features come first to the pro users, they will eventually trickle down to the free users. So it's not like they're going to keep that completely separated, just like the DeepSeek stuff was only for pro and now that's available for everyone else. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so you can set now on Android Copilot as your default assistant. And it's different than, so I was talking about how if you're on Samsung, you can use Good Lock and just remap the key to long press and you can launch Copilot. It's not doing that. What it's doing is it actually launches a new graphic that's at the bottom of the screen. It's a little microphone and has a quarter of a little aura around it. And so it's an audio input. And this is actually a lot more of an assistant. Like you can actually tell it to text message someone.
Mhm.
I think you can use it to set alarms. They said something about like ordering an Uber. Like, so it's actually going to, and it's going to get more powerful, but they are actually hooking into the operating system. So you can actually ask your phone to do stuff, which is sort of the whole idea of it being an assistant, right? But you can like control with the mic and make it stop and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of a cool feature. I really like it. Kind of glad it's there. The other cool thing that they showed off, which I don't think is live yet, although I got to check. Even for pro users, I don't think it's live. Let's see. Actually, let me do a. Yeah, I don't see it live yet. So another feature that's coming is really cool. So on the Android right now, there is the circle to search feature from Google, which is, you long press on the bottom of the screen, and then like it kind of freezes the screen, and then you can circle the thing you want, and Google will use AI to search, and it works really, really well. I use it all the time to identify. I had to go in my attic. There was a problem with our furnace, and I don't know much about furnaces. I went up there, and this thing was making noise, so I just screamed, put the camera on, did a circle to search, and learned it was a pump and how much it cost and all that. It was awesome. So when I had to call to get it fixed, I told them exactly what was the problem, which was kind of neat. So this is that, but I would say even better and more interesting. What it does is when you're in the app on Android, you can hit like a camera button, and it's going to go to a live view from your rear camera. I don't know if you can switch the cameras, but definitely from the rear camera. And you can just point it at anything, and you can have, and it has a live conversation with Copilot, and you can like point it at something and be like, tell me about this thing, and it'll tell you about it. So I saw an example. I was in a room with a bunch of stuff, and they had me like pick out anything I wanted. And so there was a Game Boy there. So she picked it up, and she's like, "Hey, Copilot, what is this?" And it was like, it didn't just identify it, but it was like a real person. Like, oh my God, that's a legacy Game Boy device. It was really famous for this, and really kind of give you a conversational answer. And then she flipped it around, and she's like, "Can you tell me about this game?" And without even pointing to the cartridge, it was able to identify the cartridge, which was Super Mario Land, and then tell you about that game and the history of it. And the fact it was able to, pick out the cartridge and separate it from the handheld, I thought was really impressive. And that's how you're gonna be able to use this. So, and you can, since it's live, you can just continue to point at other things and have it identify. Really kind of wild technology. Really, really neat. So I thought that was great. They also have a new shopping. It's not even a plugin now. Before that, they had plugins, but now it's like when you ask for like certain things like headphones and all that, it's going to surface the actual product through like Best Buy or Walmart or something like that. And then like you can click and even add it to a cart, just kind of check out. So they kind of really streamlining purchases. Not 100% sure how many people are going to make major purchases that way, but they also have a price tracker, which is in there now, which is kind of cool. So you can actually tell it if you're interested in buying something to track its price over time and alert you when it goes on sale, which is really nice. The other thing, well, if you want to talk about, you hand it off to the whole memory stuff, which is really, I think, kind of the big deal here, as well as the avatar stuff. And I'll jump back in about the avatar.
Yeah. So the Copilot memory stuff is I think the big first step forwards towards a more human-like AI assistant. It can now remember you as a person, as we talked about last week. As you talked about, it just naturally like you would a friend. It's remembering details you give it, and it's the problem with Copilot up until now has been every time you go to it, it's like you've only just met. It doesn't know anything about you really, other than your name, and you don't know anything about it, and it's a clean slate every time. That Microsoft is trying to solve that, and so it can build up a profile about you over time. And so when you do start new conversations, it has a basic idea of who you are, what you like and dislike, what you may have told it you were doing last week or a few days ago. If you mention things your friends and family doing, it will also keep that in context as well. And so when you mention something that it can sort of be relatable with, it can bring that back up at a later point. It's a big step forward. It is one of the big sort of things that I think these AI systems need to become, right? And yes, there is some privacy concerns there, but Microsoft does say that they are going to give you full control over what Copilot can and can't remember, and you can outright opt out of it if you don't want Copilot to remember anything about you. And so if you're one of those people, you can do that. But if you are somebody who does kind of want to talk to Copilot and have it remember things about you as you chat with it, this is going to be a great thing, which I also don't think this is rolling out yet, unless it is, and I'm wrong. I've not seen anyone mention that it's already rolled out, but yeah, this is going to be a big deal. And then the Copilot avatar stuff is... This was one of the... I'm actually very surprised at how little forward-leaning the event was, for it being both a 50th and AI event. I kind of thought they were going to give us teasers for what's coming in the future. We basically got none of that, except for Copilot Avatar, which is this idea that, it's a feature they're experimenting with where they will allow the user to give Copilot an identity and an appearance via an avatar. So it could be anything from, say, Clippy, or it can be some 2D sort of image, or even something more advanced like a 3D image. They didn't go into any details about how this is going to work, whether it's like an AI generated image or model, or if it's something that you can customize quite literally with like a cursor and mouse and drag things onto it and different shapes and stuff. We just don't know how it's going to work. But yeah, Dan, have you got any more additional info on the Copilot avatar stuff?
Yes. So it's very early stages. Although that doesn't mean we're going to necessarily have to wait a long time, because they're going to do it in different stages. I think the first thing that they're going to do, which will be sooner than later, I was told, is they're going to have like pre-made avatars,
right,
where you have like a choice and you can pick from them. So that they said they can do pretty quickly, and they said you probably won't have to wait too long for that. What that, is that weeks or months? I don't know. It's probably a few months, I imagine, but they think they can do that pretty quickly. The next stage would be a generative type, where you can use prompts and everything like that to design your own. I gave them some tips. I was like, they should make it like the Xbox avatar system, like where you can buy shirts for it and clothes and exclusive gear. I think that'd be kind of fun. I also suggested that it would be cool if you could upload photos of someone or something, and then have the AI convert that into an avatar through generative means. I gave the example, I would like to have one of my dogs upload the photo and convert that, and my dog Abby into an avatar. I think that would be kind of cool. It'd be a little creepy if you did it with like loved ones or people who have passed away, but it's also kind of endearing at some level. So they thought that was kind of interesting, and so maybe they'll do something like that. But of course, that'll be a little bit far out. I think this is a really great idea. Going way back to when Bing Chat was announced, I did talk about how this was already an internal debate amongst Microsoft, whether or not they should have this thing as sort of a kind of what Copilot is now, like a service that just kind of has endpoints around to various products, or should it turn into more of an assistant, which would invoke ideas like Clippy and Cortana, of course, and Siri and everything else. And so one of the reasons why they didn't want to do the avatar stuff wasn't necessarily because of the history of Clippy and Cortana. It was rather about the psychological impact of the potential of AI and the relationship it can form with people, which we've already seen. If you go look up, there's already a lot about people dating AI, and turning away from real human interaction. So there is that real potential for that to happen. And so I think they're a little bit cautious about going down that route, but it looks like they're slowly shifting back to it being more of an assistant. We just talked about it, how it is kind of an assistant on Android. It already has like personality with different voices. So I think they'll continue down that road. I don't think they're going to force this on anyone. Like I imagine If you don't want an avatar, you don't have to have one at all, right? But I think the idea of letting you choose what it looks like and behaves and all that, I think is really kind of cool, especially when you tied in with the memory thing and this thing it becomes sort of like a Tamagotchi pet,
Yeah.
except it's way smarter and knows about you and can answer all these questions. It does seem something that a little bit out of Black Mirror, but I think this is all just logical ends for where AI is going. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it.
There's also Copilot Vision and Copilot Actions. Have you had a chance to try Visions yet?
I just got it last night on my laptop. So I briefly did try it. What it does is you hit the little, I think it's like a little eye in the search box, and then it allows you to pick. So I had Copilot taking up my whole screen on my laptop. So the idea of I'm going to share my screen with it is a little weird, right? Because it's like, well, there's something else on my screen. But what it did was it brings up a little list of all my open windows with a little text of what it is, and I could pick one of those as the focus for Copilot to be looking at,
Right.
and then ask a question. So I didn't get to ask a question and actually try it out, but that's what it looked like. And again, I thought that was kind of a cool thing. I've had the Vision and Edge for a while. I don't use it too much though. Which is kind of strange, but I guess the way I browse, there isn't much I'm looking at the web that I don't know what it is I'm looking at, because presumably I got to that page because I clicked on something and I know what it is, right? But it's kind of a neat feature. So I think this Vision that's tied more to the app and can globally see what's on your PC screen instead of just the browser, I think has a lot more potential, because there is definitely stuff that could be on your computer that you would want to search or look up. Have you been able to try any of this?
Sadly not, because a lot of it is rolling out in waves and a lot of it is US only in the first wave. So we sadly have to wait. But I am excited to try Copilot Vision. It is one of the more interesting announcements I think that was made last week. But I think this probably leads me nicely into the sort of topic I want to talk about is where are we going with Copilot? What is Microsoft's sort of end goal here? Because in the last year, we've seen under Mustafa, we've seen a massive Copilot redesign, essentially a repositioning of what Copilot is. If you remember, if you cast our minds back, Copilot, when it was first announced, was very much an AI tool designed to be useful as a tool. But with Mustafa coming in, he's sort of giving it a new facelift, and he's really repositioned it as an AI friend. He's leaning in on the more human interaction side of things, which is quite different from ChatGPT and Gemini and all the other generative AI assistants on the market right now. Copilot does feel the most friendly as a result of the changes Mustafa has made. And so I'm wondering, what is the angle? Where are we going with this? Why do we keep getting these Copilot events every half a year or every 4 or 5 months where they announce all these advanced new features? And the Copilot Visions is one of those features where it sounds great. It's a great idea, but its usefulness is still limited to the fact that Copilot is an app. This is the problem I have with Copilot, is that Copilot is still a thing you have to go to get things moving. It isn't ambient. It isn't automatic. Surely Microsoft's end goal here is to sort of integrate Copilot as this ambient entity that's able to flow through the operating system and just be helpful automatically without you needing to initiate it or think about, oh, I know Copilot can help me with this. Copilot should just already be helping you from beginning to end. And so the idea of a Copilot OS, I'm sure, has crossed Microsoft's mind internally. We know through the NXT project that Microsoft has certainly explored what an AI-powered OS would look like. Was that internally a more just proof of concept, or was that a serious project effort idea that Microsoft wants to pursue and bring to market? There's obviously pros and cons for doing a new OS or a Copilot OS, and should it be a Windows Copilot OS or should it be this entirely separate new thing that runs alongside Windows? These are all questions Microsoft needs to figure out. But I definitely think the end goal is for Copilot to be more than just an app. It needs to be in the OS. It needs to be part of the OS. And honestly, it probably needs, in some cases, its own hardware. the idea of we talked about the Facebook glasses, the AI glasses and stuff, those glasses that can see the world, and you can ask them questions and it can ambiently respond to you. Copilot needs something like that. If we really are going down this route of Copilot vision and this more human Copilot, it's going to need its own hardware. It's going to need to be part of the OS more deeply than just an app that sits at the very top level. What are your thoughts on that, Dan? Do you agree? Do you just disagree?
Yeah, no, 100% agree, because we're kind of talking about that early this week internally. Richard Devine was talking about how he uses ChatGPT a lot. And then we also have, Google Gemini, which we have for work now, right? So we have access to that through our company because they use Google Works. And I have a free, well, you and I both should have the free pro version too for personal use, because Samsung offers it with a 6-month trial, basically. That said, so the question is like, why don't I use ChatGPT or Gemini? Even though they're fine, they're really good, right? And it's not a issue about their accuracy or results necessarily. The reason I stick with Copilot is 2 reasons. One, aesthetically, I just find it very pleasing. I think the new design just looks great. It feels like it just has more personality to me. But the other strength that this has is the endpoints. The fact that Microsoft has put it everywhere, which we were joking about, right? It's like, oh, it's in SwiftKey now. Now it's on Android. Now it's like they were literally jamming it everywhere. But that's its strength, because the ability to have it everywhere makes me want to use it, or at least makes it more convenient to use. It's right there in my browser. I have a button on my keyboard now that brings up a dedicated app. That app is also improving constantly. They're just showing me some new designs that they're doing, not refreshes to the overall design, but just making it, there was a complaint that, oh, it's just a web app, but they're making it more and more native and reactive in sizing. And one of the benefits of having it in all these places is the fact that my history travels around with it. So if I'm using it on my phone, I can just quickly bring up my history and see what I had looked up on my desktop just a few hours earlier. To me, again, that is also a huge benefit. And it's familiar. I know how it's going to work everywhere. But because it's there on my phone, it's on my laptop, it's on my desktop, it's at Word, it's in my browser. Because it's in all those places, I use it a lot. ChatGPT isn't. I can use it on the web, or I can use it as an app on the phone. But it's not the same as being tied into everywhere. Like everywhere I look at Windows now, I see that little icon, right? And the same thing you could say about Grok. It's in Twitter. There is now a separate app you can download. And the same thing with Gemini, right? And going further, what you're saying with the OS part, like Microsoft has the opportunity here to, basically make Windows Copilot like AI. I don't know what they would even call it. Did they call it Copilot OS? That makes sense, but they will never get rid of Windows. So we know that's not going to happen. But do you just call it Windows AI? Windows Copilot Edition? I don't know. But like that ability to really build it deep into the operating system will make it so it does something that no other AI system can do. There's no way OpenAI could ever do that. There's no way Google could do that. And there's no way Grok can do that. It's only Microsoft can do that. So I think Microsoft putting it everywhere as much as they can is its benefit. And the deeper they can go into Windows to make it useful, which we know they're going to do. It just takes time, right? They have to go literally deep into the OS and tool it to make sure it gets access to everything. But yeah, that has to be their end goal.
Yeah, and I do hope that is what they're doing, because you said Microsoft is in a unique position where they do have that advantage of baking it into a platform that has billions of users, or will have billions of users. Apple's the only other company that can kind of that. Google could do it with Android, obviously, and Apple could do it with the iPhone, but Apple also has Mac OS, which is the other big desktop platform where AI can be woven through. But we know Apple is years behind everybody else, so we're not really looking or expecting that to be the case anytime soon. So Microsoft really has like an open runway here to really sort of bring this down and land it whenever it feels like at this point. But I think they should get there sooner rather than later, because I have noticed this trend whenever people are talking about these AI assistants and comparing all these different generative AI technologies and services and stuff. Copilot, for some reason, is rarely, if ever, mentioned. It's always ChatGPT, it's always Gemini, it's always DeepSeek, or and there's 100 million of them these days, but Copilot is rarely mentioned. I don't see it, and that's a problem. That is a problem, and Microsoft needs to pull ahead here. And the only way I can think they can do that is with Windows, is with an operating system platform
I think
that the others don't have.
That's, I think, bias in tech media, because we all know that a lot of people in tech media use Apple products as their main laptop. And so if you're living on a Mac OS, you're not using Copilot. So you're probably using ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what that is. But you're right. I've seen a lot of people in media, that's kind of what they do, is they sort of mention all those systems, but they kind of ignore what's going on with Copilot.
Yeah, I think Copilot, I think the problem as well is that when Microsoft did start announcing Bing Chat and then Copilot, is that they were very open about the feature being powered by OpenAI. And so I think a lot of people just view Copilot as, oh, that's just OpenAI. It's just ChatGPT. We don't need to have Copilot and ChatGPT in the same thing. We could just compare ChatGPT, which hasn't always been actually true, right? Copilot from the beginning has, although been mostly powered by ChatGPT, at least at the start, there was a little bit of Microsoft tech being mixed in there to make it a little bit different. And as time progresses, Microsoft has been implementing more and more of its own magic into the Copilot, I don't know, recipe. And we do know Microsoft is working on its own large language models to eventually replace its dependency on OpenAI. And I found it very interesting that Sam Altman, this was the first Copilot event since Microsoft and OpenAI's partnership really sort of came to the surface, where Sam Altman said nothing. He usually makes a tweet and reminding everybody that Microsoft's and OpenAI's partnership is great and there's a selfie with Satya or whatever. Sam Altman said nothing this time. I think Microsoft is creeping away from OpenAI and they want to start mixing their own tech into this versus using OpenAI stuff. And I think even someone, I don't know who said it, but from the event last week, I think somebody asked one of the people at Microsoft, how far out are your own, large language models? And they were like, probably about 6 months or 6 months behind the competition, I think is what they said. And so there's a bit of catching up to do, but I'm guessing that's why they haven't fully sort of stepped off the gas in regards to its partnership with OpenAI, because their tech isn't there yet. Once it's able to compete head to head, then I think we'll see Microsoft pull away from OpenAI.
Yeah, that's a really good observation, actually, about OpenAI. And I think you're right. They definitely do want to move away, because while it definitely helped to bootstrap them and get into the market pretty quickly, long term, OpenAI could decide it doesn't want to renew a contract with Microsoft. It does, or maybe wants to go into its own direction. And it's clear, OpenAI definitely has more users, so they have kind of a big opportunity. So they may want to distance themselves from and differentiate themselves from Microsoft.
Yeah.
And were they to do that, if Microsoft doesn't have anything, they'd be left with with almost like where Apple is with Siri, where Siri almost got worse over the last couple of years. And even, you mentioned about Mac OS getting all these features, but, we already know Apple's a couple of years behind that. So again, Microsoft can be sort of the first with this operating system that's more AI-ish. I think, Google will do it quickly with Android as well.
And Chrome OS.
Chrome OS, yeah, but they don't talk about Chrome OS. Right?
Yeah, it's
Chrome
really
OS
strange.
is just they don't talk about it. There was when was the last time you saw Google on stage make a big deal about new features for it? They backed off of making hardware for it. It's really it's really interesting how that really hasn't become their thing. So I think they'll focus heavily on Android for it. Apple's a couple of years behind. So Microsoft definitely has the opportunity here for this.
Yeah, I do find it interesting, and I know this isn't a great metric to base anything off, but it's a metric that we have. If you look at the Google Play Store and the number of downloads for all three, Copilot, Gemini, and OpenAI and ChatGPT, ChatGPT and Gemini both have 100 million plus downloads, and Copilot only has 10 million plus, which isn't a small number, but it's a tiny number compared to 100 million. And so that's probably a representation of how many people are using Copilot versus all the others right now, which can't be great news for Microsoft internally. Like, their usage numbers isn't that high. If you remember, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, yeah, you're right. It's only 10 million plus downloads, right? So it's not terrible, but it has a 4.7 rating from almost 100. Almost a million reviews, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a pretty high rating, so people do like it. So if the 10 million thing, it was like 10 million, but it also had like a 3.2 score, I'd be like, okay, they're going to have some real issues here. But at least the people who are using it seem to really enjoy it, and that's important, right? Because you can build off of that. So
yeah, and I have to wonder as well if maybe that people aren't using Copilot because of this forced hostility towards Microsoft. People just don't want to use Microsoft products, I feel like. And we saw this last year with Recall, the backlash from Recall, and people to this day still say they don't want to buy Copilot Plus PCs because they don't want to partake in any of this AI stuff that Microsoft is doing. Yet these same people are absolutely more than happy to use ChatGPT in a web browser or as an app on their Mac or even a Windows computer. Like, I don't get it. Why are we so averse to Microsoft doing all this stuff? And honestly, I think it's what happens when you don't, or when you throw away your fan base. Like, when you don't have people advocating for you, it's like,
it's also mobile. It's a smartphone thing too. If you're on an iPhone, you're not going to use Copilot probably.
No, yeah,
because you don't have Windows.
Default.
Yeah, and if you're on Android, Google's shoving Gemini down everybody's throat. But to be fair, not to be fair, but I mean, criticism with Google I've seen, which is I think accurate too, is Gemini is a stupid name.
Yeah,
like people know Chat GPT, right? So that's a terrible name too. Don't get me wrong, but it became synonymous with this genre of technology, just like a Xerox is a photocopy and a Kleenex is a tissue. So ChatGPT, as dumb as a word it is, people know what that is and refer to almost all of these products as sort of ChatGPT, right? So they won that. No one knows what Gemini is, but people do know Google search, right? So people know that, but they haven't been able to necessarily turn Google search users into Gemini users. So they have a similar problem, I think, too. They just have the benefit of the fact that they can make it the default assistant when you're setting up your new phone. It's going to be Gemini this, and do you want to try this? And so they get, which no one complains about, by the way, right? No one complains about the advertising in Android by Google. It's only when Microsoft reminds you that you can do something. They're just being, desperate. So I think, I was just talking about how I use Copilot everywhere, but it's because I start off with Windows as my sort of central, right? I have a laptop, I have a desktop, actually I have a couple of laptops. So that's be like my central experience. So then I want to carry that to the phone. Whereas I think a lot of people are starting off with the phone, and then how you get them to the desktop is, a different kind of, it's a different challenge, I would say, for them.
Yeah. So yeah, I think probably in the next year or two, we will probably see Microsoft announce some sort of Copilot OS or deep in Copilot integration with Windows. We kind of know they want to do this, right? Like it has to happen at some point, and it has to happen soon. I think they can't drag their feet any longer on this because they are behind, I guess, in regards to market share. And a good way to boost that market share would be to implement it into the platform that hundreds of millions of users already using, because I imagine Windows 11 must have over 500 million users at this point. And as the Windows 10 creeps closer to end of support, more and more people will make the switch to Windows 11, and so it will be no time before Windows 11 is approaching on 1 billion devices, and so that's a big market for Copilot to integrate into. Obviously, there's Copilot Plus PCs. Here's the thing: does Microsoft want to limit its Copilot capabilities to Copilot Plus stuff? I don't know if that makes sense to do. I think they need to do their best to try and implement it as fully as they can. I think Copilot Vision is not a Copilot Plus feature. I think it works on any Windows 11 machine. And so we will probably need to see more of that if we want people to start using Copilot more. Because I can only imagine Copilot Plus market share is very low. If we take a look at the Windows 11 market share, it's probably 98% non-Copilot Plus PC, and that will probably be the case for a long time. And so I think Microsoft does need to prioritize universal Copilot features versus Copilot Plus exclusive stuff, at least for the time being.
Yep, agree there. Let's move on, I guess, to the special 50th anniversary edition Surface laptop. So this kind of came out of nowhere, though it shouldn't be too surprising, I guess. But Microsoft is celebrating its 50th anniversary with a special Surface laptop, which they threw up on their Instagram page. The good news, it's complete. My best friend was like, "How much does it cost?" I'm like, "Oh, the good news is it's like completely free. It's $0. You can have it." The bad news, obviously, is it's a contest, so they're not going to be selling this in stores or online,
which is
I
shocking.
think is a bit of a shame.
Yeah,
I think they should have made some available for purchase, but as we'll talk later with the tariff situation, how many do they order? And then now they're facing imports, so they would have had to have thought about this weeks or months ago, decided that they're going to order like 1,000. I don't know how many they did order, to try to meet demand, so I think there's a challenge there that's going to, be a problem. That said, I think it would have been cool to have some online because, they could have done a drop, and it's going to like launch at 11 p.m. and, we only have a limited amount. And I guarantee people would have rushed to buy.
I would have bought one. I already have a Surface. I would have bought one of these.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my best friend was like, looking to maybe get one. Obviously, asking for the price. So to win one, you gotta, if you go to the Surface Instagram page, they have the full directions up there, although I put it in our article too. But basically, you need to take, this is kind of funny too, you need to take a photo of your existing Surface, which already rules out a lot of people. But it's like your Surface on the go, right? So you're using it, and like you got to tell them like why you love your Surface with that photo. Then you have to put 2 hashtags on there, including like Microsoft 50th anniversary or something. And then I think Microsoft 50 was the other. And you have to follow @Surface on Instagram, which you should be doing anyway. They actually have a really good Instagram channel because they have such good design and photos and all that kind of stuff. So if you do that and you get it all done before April 14th, so not even that long, you can win one. Oh, you also have to be in the United States or Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that really sucks.
Yeah, they really made this a difficult thing to get into the more details. So I did find out, because they didn't publish any of this, but it is the 13.8-inch version, which I kind of figured out from the top-down shot of the keyboard. If you look at that compared to the 15, it's the keyboard is closer to the edge on the 13, obviously, and the touchpad seems larger because of the size, So it's definitely the 13.8-inch. It's black. Oh yeah, I should talk about what makes it 50th, right? So it's all black, but there's 2 things different about it. One is the mirror logo on the back cover for Surface is gold, which looks really sharp against the black. And then on the keyboard deck itself, on the lower right side, is the original 1975 Microsoft logo engraved into the laptop, which looks really cool. There's no color to it. It's just like a grayish kind of thing. So it's kind of subtle, but it's that logo, and then below it says 1975. I also think it has a special wallpaper that matches all of this, which the wallpaper is like black and gold too. So it's just like black and gold motif, which I always think looks really hot. In fact, we talked about the Lumia 930. Had the black and gold version, which looked really amazing. So yeah, it is also the Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite model. So there's that question, is it Intel or Qualcomm? I said was probably going to be Snapdragon because it's a consumer contest, a kind of consumer model. But who knows, right? Maybe they had a thing with Intel. But no, it is, I had to find out, it is Snapdragon X Elite. I don't know the RAM or storage, but it's got to be a minimum 16 gigs of RAM or 512 storage. Interestingly, though, Microsoft, through Microsoft.com, does sell not only the 32 gig version, but a 64 gig version.
Which is US only, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. So like, are they going to go real baller on this and offer the 1 terabyte 64 gig, which would also kind of future-proof the laptop a little bit? not that anyone really needs. I mean, 32 gig would be enough for most people, but 64 is like a lot. I've never even had a laptop with 64 gigs. I don't know that. I don't know yet. So what I do know is I'll be getting one in for photos. So
damn you, Daniel.
I will be able to answer this question, which I'm very excited about. I'm also excited because it is the 13-inch version. So if I had to choose a Surface laptop, it'd be the 13-inch Qualcomm model, right?
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what this is, except it has gold and that special logo on it.
Except it's better in every way.
There's only two other things that can make it perfect. It was if it had Alcantara, which would have been really pushing it, and the anti-reflective or anti-glare display.
And 5G, because they are making a 5G laptop this summer.
Right, and 5G. Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah,
that would be
that would be the ultimate one.
So, I was going to say, do you think the competition would accept a picture of me using a Surface Neo?
You could try. I would do that.
That's hilarious. That'd be great. But I'm not in America, so I'm not even eligible. So
yeah, but you should still do it just anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because it'd be funny. I mean, people will be searching for that hashtag. So
that's funny.
Kind of cool. But yeah, so I imagine they're going to give some of these out to probably employees too. I'm sure the Surface team is probably going to get these. Maybe Satya Nadella gets a model. I don't know, but I don't know how many they have, how many they're giving out, but it's a very small batch. Obviously, I was told I should have one in a couple of weeks. So hopefully before build. Who knows? Maybe at build they will announce something, but people should like complain to Microsoft that, that they should like make it available to buy.
Yeah, I'm also surprised it's not the Surface Pro, because that is really the device that put them on the map in regards to hardware.
Yeah. Well,
it's a strange choice.
Yeah, because I mean, they could have done a black one with the gold there, and put the logo on the back, I suppose, for the Microsoft.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, there's not enough surfaces to put all the different things.
Yeah, you would have to put it on the kickstand or something like that, which, I mean, that would have been fine.
Oh,
yeah, I think
actually, they could have just sold a separate keyboard with the same thing, like the Microsoft thing.
Yeah, and they've done that before, right? They did have that laser engraved one
that
they launched. That was really kind of cool. But I don't see why they don't have like 500 or 1,000 of them.
Yeah, I don't know either.
In fact, I would say that. I would be like, we have 500 of these. We're going to put available on the site on this date and time. First come, first serve. Well, I think if you did that, that creates that FOMO.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure people would buy it.
They have said they're only giving out 50, but they must have made more than 50 because obviously Dan's getting one. So
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't see that they only made 50. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Wow. What's funny though? It's like limited edition celebratory laptops are great. I have Lenovo's 30th anniversary laptop, but I think the battery died on it, so I have to replace it. But it's running like a processor that's like 3 or 4 years old at this point, which is just like, it's so behind the times. Who's going to use it, right? Yeah. It's a cool looking laptop though. Yeah. I mean, but Lenovo's done 2 anniversary laptops, actually. I think they did 25 and 30 years, or was it 30 and 35 was one of those. But
I can't wait to see how much these Surfaces go for on ebaythese special editions.
I'm sure someone's going to sell off a couple of them, right? Yeah, but I think Microsoft, they should do 500. Or maybe they do 50, even just 50 and put them online, right? But they should do some finite number, put it online, and people should buy them.
I agree.
So anyway, let's talk about the latest on Windows 11. I noticed my release preview laptop, which was about the X9 15. Last night, I rebooted for an update, and all of a sudden, I had Recall.
Yes.
Installed on it, which I was surprised about. So why don't you spill the beans on that?
Yeah, so Recall is just about ready to ship. It's now in the release preview channel, and that's usually the last hurdle before something gets released generally to the public. In this case, Recall now being in the release preview channel means Microsoft is pretty much gearing up to ship it out to the outside of the testing program. Obviously, this is a feature that is still exclusive to Copilot Plus PCs and will be. So if you're somebody who doesn't want Recall and doesn't have a Copilot Plus PC, you have nothing to worry about. This doesn't affect you in any which way. This is only for Copilot Plus PCs, and it means in the next few weeks, likely towards the end of April or sometime in May, Windows Recall will begin rolling out generally to people outside the Windows Insider program. And that's a big deal because if you remember rightly, Recall was supposed to ship last June. So we're coming up on almost a year since Recall was announced and was supposed to ship, and we're only just getting it outside of the Windows Insider program. So it's a big deal. It's a big milestone. It's the first point in which Copilot Plus PCs will have all of the features that were announced for them back in May last year. And it also allows Microsoft to finally start moving ahead with Recall and start implementing additional and new features that make the feature better going forward. Yeah, for those who don't know, Recall is a feature that you can turn off and uninstall if you don't want it. So when this update does eventually come that does include Recall, you don't have to use it if you don't want to. The feature is secure now. Microsoft has done a lot of, that's why it's taken so long. Microsoft did a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure the data it collects is securely stored locally on your device. It doesn't move. It doesn't get uploaded anywhere. It remains on your device in an encrypted state. And the only thing you can do with it is see it if you log in with your Windows Hello Face Unlock or fingerprint, or you delete it and then you don't get to see it anymore. That's the only things you can do with the data, and that's by design now. And so that's pretty cool. But yes, Recall is finally almost upon us. And yeah, I think it's about time because, like I said, this was supposed to launch last year, and it's taken so long. It was a big misstep, a big controversy. It has died down now. I think most people are okay with it. I'm not seeing as much backlash this time around with the idea that it's now finally launching from people. People seem to be like, meh, it's fine. And so, yeah, for those who ain't going to use it, they're not going to use it. For those who will find value in it, you're going to love it because I think Recall is great. It has saved my bacon a couple of times now, where especially in regards to working directly in the CMS, which as writers, we know we should never do, but we do anyway. A couple of times Recall has been able to I've lost some work and Recall's had it in there, and I'm just able to go back and copy it through there and paste it back into the CMS, which is amazing. It's also helped me a couple of times with deleted tweets. Someone will send me a rude tweet, or somebody will tweet some information and then delete it. If I've not captured the screenshot of it, no worries. Recall has it. I just go back in, type what I remember seeing, and it's right there as if I did take a screenshot, which is, I think, actually the best part of Recall is that it holds everyone accountable. You can't just say things on the internet and delete it now, because if somebody's following you with a Copilot Plus PC, it's going to be stored on their device and they can bring it up to you anytime. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, so Dan, is this the first time you've been using Recall then?
No, I have it on the Pro 11. I did put that into the, I think it was the dev program. So that said, I haven't used it. I mean, I've tried it, but
Yeah.
I've not had a situation yet where I've needed to recall something.
Sure.
I think I'll probably use it on my desktop, since I sit at my desktop way more than on my laptop when I'm at home, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think I'll probably end up using it there. What's neat about it is it is very seamless. Like, you don't notice it running. There's no slowdown on your system. Like, it's just like you have no idea that it's doing its thing, which also means you, of course, can turn it off, if you don't want to use it. But if you leave it on, you're not going to notice it's doing anything, which is obviously how that technology should work. So
yeah, I've said this before, and again, this is one of the reasons why this feature isn't here. The whole security and privacy controversy is why this isn't a thing. But I wish you could sync the data it collects to the cloud so that it could sync across different devices. Because more often than not, I would be at one PC, know that I worked on something, type it into Recall, and be like, oh no, I didn't do it on this PC, it's on another PC. So then you have to go and find it and do that. That's so annoying, and I do wish there was an option to sync with the cloud. Obviously, that's not there because they don't want people getting upset at the idea of syncing this data to the cloud. I'm somebody who's given up my privacy years ago. I don't care who sees what I'm working on, whatever. I'll send it all to Microsoft. Just let me have convenience. I value comfort over everything else, and being able to sync this data would be a nice feature for me personally. Maybe they'll work on that in the future. But yeah, that's the latest with Recall. It is Recall and Click to Do, and a lot of the AI Copilot Plus stuff is now in the Release Preview channel, which means it is gearing up to launch very soon. So that's super fun. There was also a new dev and beta channel build this week, and that introduced an interesting update to the widgets panel. So as we all know, the widgets panel currently works as so. On the left is the widgets, and on the right is MSN. And anything you click in the MSN field will take you into a browser, usually Edge, but and some markets it will actually adhere to your default browser choice. But that's kind of annoying. It's a disjointed experience, and Microsoft is clearly aware of that because now the widgets panel will open articles within the widgets panel. So if you click on one of those MSN stories, instead of opening a browser, it will load up the article within the panel that slides out. And so it looks a lot more seamless. It doesn't interrupt your workflow. And then when you're done, you can quite literally click away from the panel and it will dismiss the article in question. Dan, this is a feature you're going to like, because I know you like that MSN feed.
I do. It's a good distractor. So
yeah. And that's pretty much it. There's not too much else going on in the world of Windows currently. Obviously, there wasn't any Windows
I just want to
news.
point out
Sorry, go on.
the one thing I kind of complained a little bit about on Twitter, which was the new emoji icon in the system tray.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who don't know, as when you're in a text field, it shows this little emoji thing in your system tray, which you can click and bring up your emoji picker, which is just another cool way of like bringing it up instead of using the shortcut keys. So I like the idea, but it's funny because it's like a little box and mine has a heart in it. And apparently they're A/B testing this.
Yeah.
And like, I remember I saw it one morning and I just woke up on my laptop and I was just like, what? Why is my battery dead? I'm dying. Like it's an energy saver. Like I just charged it, so I plug it in and it disappears when you're not in a text field, it disappears. So then I was like, oh, wait, what? And then like, wait, the battery says it's fully charged. I'm like, what's going on here? And then I realized, no, it's not that. So yeah, it looks just like when the laptop goes into like energy saver mode almost.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that because someone else told me that they had, I think it was like a smiley face.
They're A/B testing different icons. So I think your feedback will be quite valuable there because it can be misconstrued as the energy saver icon. And so I bet that one doesn't ship.
Yeah. But like I said, like I do like the concept behind it. So I hope they keep it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the smiley face is fine. I mean, everybody understands like a smiley face icon usually means emojis. So I don't know why they won't just go with that. But yeah, I think it's cool to have that down there because it does, as I said before, a lot of people don't know about the emoji panel because it's a hidden feature. It requires a keyboard command to get access to it. And Windows doesn't tell you that it exists. Having it just sort of ambiently show up in the taskbar whenever you click into a text field is nice. And I think people will notice it. Go, oh, there's a smiley face. Click. And enter a whole new world of features in Windows, which is kind of cool. I was going to say, obviously we didn't get any Windows news at the Microsoft 50th event. I kind of was hoping we would get something, but no, it was just all Copilot and memes. And so I'm wondering if maybe next month we'll get some Windows stuff because obviously 25H2 is coming later this year. Plus we know there's probably some more Copilot Plus features the company wants to get out the door. And so maybe a Windows event is imminent or upon us, perhaps. I don't know. I don't have any actual internal information about that. But given we had a Windows event last May, maybe we'll get another one this May, and that's maybe when we'll hear about the upcoming mini Surface PCs as well, because I think it makes sense if they're going to do a Windows event, they might as well announce some new hardware. And especially if Recall's becoming generally available next month as well, then maybe that can all be tied together neatly into one single event. Probably before build, maybe at build. I don't know. I feel like we say this every year, but at this point, build is definitely just not for fun consumer announcements, right? It's usually just enterprise and developer related. So probably won't be at build, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of mini Windows event maybe next month. But again, that's fully just speculation. April, Copilot, May, Windows, June, Xbox. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping is happening anyway. Because Summer Game Fest has just been announced, and Microsoft is probably going to make some Xbox and Windows related announcements. We know they're working on some new gaming UI for Xbox, which will benefit handhelds and this whole Xbox ecosystem, which they're kickstarting later this year. That's all got to be announced soon. And so June probably makes sense for that. So that's why I'm thinking May will probably, hopefully, be Windows, and we'll get some new Windows announcements and maybe new devices there as well.
Someone in comments is saying, we have advanced AI, but we still have no way to search text in PC screenshots. And I said, no, you can do that. For one, 99% sure recall when you search will pick that up via, because that's what recall is. It's a bunch of screenshots, basically. So you can do that and for certain keywords or whatever. But if you use the snipping tool in Windows to do a screenshot, when you go to the bottom of it, you have the little pens, the highlighter, eraser, shapes, your crop button. And next to the crop button is called text actions. It's a little, looks like a little box with writing going across. When you click that, it scans your screenshot and gives you copy all text, copy as table, quick redact, which will block out email addresses and phone numbers, which is automatically for you, which is awesome. But yeah, you could just do that, copy all the text, and then put it into a notepad or whatever easily with a screenshot. So I assume that's what you're talking about, but that came out a few months ago. I love it. Snipping tool is actually like one of the most powerful, most used things I use on Windows. So it's kind of cool to see. Although they did take away the ruler, which kind of annoys me.
In snipping tool?
I don't know if it was in snipping tools or the photo editor. Might have been, or was it Paint? I forgot which one. They had like a ruler that used to go across the screen, and you can, because if you're going to do like a highlighter, you can put the little ruler up and then like highlight.
Yeah, you're right. There was I can't. Was that not Windows 10 era? Maybe Windows 7.
No, it was in Windows 11. Because I used it pretty
Because I
frequently.
remember the Windows Ink workspace had that. You remember that little thing that flew out from the taskbar? You had like different access to like, oh my god, I can't remember the name of the app now. There was a sketch pad or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, that had it, but they had a. I'm 99% sure it was in snipping tool too, because I remember the highlighter button.
Yeah,
it was there at the bottom, and you would put it up, and then you can use the highlighter.
They just deleted it. Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who was paid to do that?
I used it a lot, so it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone says snipping tool out of ruler, yes, OneNote too. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
I have to write an editorial.
That's so annoying.
Microsoft. Yeah.
Right, yeah, so that's pretty much it for the Windows stuff. Dan, would you like to talk about the exciting topic of tariffs?
Not really, but I will. So yeah, we have a live blog going on that I'm mostly writing in, covering the tariffs because, well, okay, the TLDR, obviously Trump announced on April 2nd, Liberation Day, and they're going to throw all these tariffs on over 70 countries, and the numbers were all over the place, and someone did the math on it. It has to do with the trade imbalances between countries, blah, blah, blah. And then, we put one on China that was pretty high. And then China threw back a retaliatory tariff. And then we threw back a retaliatory tariff. And it literally went back and forth. And China just upped it again today. So China went from 84% to 125%, which seemingly matched our 125%, except that then it came out that our 125% was actually 145%, because we tacked on an extra 20% because they're not helping curb fentanyl shipments to the United States, which we have a big problem with here. So yeah, what does that mean? Like, well, I did the math on a 125%, but it meant if you're importing a laptop that was built out of China, which most are, that $1,000 laptop would now cost $2,250.
Oh my god. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's just simply not doable, right? Increasing a tariff from like 2% to 5% would be, reasonable. Like that's, do you pass it on to the consumer and they don't really notice it, or does the company just swallow the cost and cut back a little bit on their profits? But you can't go from like single digits to 145%, right? What's going to happen, we're already starting to see this, is like we did an article about the gaming handhelds, whether you should buy one now or wait. And we're already starting to see Best Buy seems to be out of, I think it was the ROG Ally or Ally X. And there's just not available except for open box. And what's going to happen is once Best Buy and Amazon Walmart, whatever, start running out of stock of these things. Of course, they have their main warehouses. So you have your local store, but then you have your main warehouse. And when they start running out of their main warehouse, they're going to have to order more, through ASUS, who's going to ship them from China. But no one's going to pay more than double the cost for one of these things. So what's going to happen is Best Buy just won't reorder it. So you're going to start to see products notify me or, not in stock. And that's going to apply for laptops, that's, gaming consoles, PCs, all that will be affected. Now, it's not necessarily the chips themselves that are being tariffed. And in fact, in the live blog, I mentioned how China said Qualcomm and AMD should be okay, actually, for importing into China because they're manufactured by TSMC in Taiwan. So they're going to treat it like that. But Intel chips, which can be made in the US, but I don't really think so. But Intel has fabs in Israel because I know I've been to one. But they're going to probably hit Intel with their 125% tariff, which means, for those companies, Qualcomm might pick up and AMD might pick up Intel's business because no one in China is going to pay the 125% on Intel products. So you just switch away. Yeah, so the question then is, should you buy laptops, PCs, gaming handhelds, consoles, cars, whatever now, or do you wait? And it's, for the gaming handhelds, I said you should probably just try to buy one now while they're still on shelves. Because of two reasons. One, this could go on for days, weeks, or months. It could literally end tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
That's what happened earlier this week where Trump put a 90-day pause on like 70 plus countries because those countries apparently said, let's talk, which is kind of the whole point of this, is to get those countries to come back to the table to renegotiate a free trade agreement. And right now, China's being stubborn, saying they're not going to be bullied into this. And so this could, at some point someone has to blink and they'll have talks and they'll figure out something. But the question is, does it happen in days, weeks, or months?
Yeah.
Maybe even years. We don't know, so it can go on for a while. The other reason I would say is because we're not actually expecting like a new gaming handheld to come out really anytime soon. You have the Legion Go S with Steam OS, but that already went up in price by $50. MSI just increased their Claw 7, went from $800 to $830, which wasn't too bad. But they literally just today jacked it up to $899. And then they jacked up the price of the Claw 8, which is slightly bigger, from $899 to $999, so by $100, right? So we're already starting to see these increases kind of come through. And that was, some of these price increases were even before this tariff was announced on China. Like that $100 difference won't make up the difference for 145% tariff. I almost feel like that's just those companies just getting extra money for whatever reason. Yeah. But long term, are companies going to shift manufacturing laptops to other countries? Yeah, possibly. Apple this week was who makes a lot of iPhones in China, not all of them, but a lot of them. They also make them in India because Apple has been slowly trying to diversify its supply chain. But they don't make enough out of India to make up for China. That said, they just apparently are airlifting 1.5 million, I think, iPhones out of India to ship to the US to sort of beat the tariffs and everything like that.
Yeah. Should we briefly talk about the impact it's having on the market as of right now? Like we've seen a number of OEMs in the laptop space and not just laptops, phones as well, and handheld gaming from the likes of Nintendo. Halt sales, or at least halt pre-orders for things as well. Like Nintendo just announced the Switch 2 and pre-orders were supposed to go live a couple of days back, but they've announced that they're not holding pre-orders in the US at this time now because they're trying to calculate how much this thing's going to actually cost now because of all the tariffs and stuff. OnePlus just launched the OnePlus Watch 3. And that was originally announced with a $329 price tag back when it was announced a few months ago. It's only just gone on sale now. but they've had to up the price to $499 to, I guess, related to tariffs. And a number of OEMs in the laptop space have either paused sales or are well, yeah, some of them have just paused sales. They're like, you can't buy this right now because we literally have no idea how much we need to pay to get it into the country. And so you're going to see probably more of that take place soon. And obviously that brings the question, the upcoming smaller services, which we know are at least the current plan is to announce them next month, but they were supposed to be cheaper surfaces, right? They were supposed to sort of undercut the current Surface Pro laptop by $150. Is that going to be possible now with the tariffs, or does that sort of the idea of these being smaller and cheaper, is that thrown out the window now? And does that mean Microsoft delays the announcement, or does Microsoft just jack up the prices of everything? And so now these smaller devices start at $999 and $1099. Who knows? These are all these questions and things these tech companies, these hardware makers are having to navigate right now. And yeah, if you are, I guess, would a good advice be, because again, we don't know when this is going to end, but if you are in the market for a laptop as of right now and you are looking at a laptop that is yet to have a price hike, should you just pull the trigger and grab it now to, avoid the risk of having to pay upwards of 125% on top of what you was already going to pay?
Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, and I don't know what the 125 for 145%. Does it cover the whole laptop, pieces of the laptop? It's really complicated, but it's probably going to be more than $100 or $200, right? Increase on the laptops. So, whatever stock is available in the States right now is fine. But as soon as that runs out, then if this is still going on, which it very much could be, there's going to be problems. So one reason I would say to even get a new laptop now is we're not expecting new Intel chips until next year, right? So same with AMD. Qualcomm, we are expecting new chips, but I don't think those will be on shelves until holiday season for like November. So you still have time there. That said, those Qualcomm chips are supposed to be kind of a big deal in terms of performance. On the other hand, it's not like the current Qualcomm chips, especially the Snapdragon X Elite, is slow, right? They're still faster than a lot of the Intel chips on the market. So I think you'd still be very happy with the performance in it and battery life. It's going to be a little bit more with a newer device. But if this is still going on come November, it doesn't matter. You're not going to get new Qualcomm laptops either, right? Because they're not going to, I just mentioned about the chips, but that doesn't apply for importing into the US if the chips are made in, although actually the Trump administration says it doesn't affect semiconductors for coming into the US. So technically that's fine. But the rest of the device, if it's made in China, does fall under the tariff.
Yeah.
So
and maybe Dan, for those who don't know how tariffs even work, why does this affect end users? Why?
Yeah. So so the tariff, people are kind of confused sometimes with how it works. But when we put a tariff on China, it just means that when a company here in the US wants to bring in something from China, they're going to have to pay this tax to bring it in. And then when China slaps a tariff on us, it just means our products going over there will be taxed. And the rates that we're talking about are so high, it literally prohibits selling products. And so so you have that, but the idea, of course, is to tariffs are normal. Every country has tariffs. It's just that they're more reasonable numbers, but they're used to offset market imbalances, trade advantages, and these kind of things to try to level the field. But they're usually negotiated through free trade agreements. United States, and this is where I don't disagree with the Trump administration, is China has broken a lot of the WTO rules. Nothing's been done about it. It's very routine for companies in the US to go over there with their new inventions and their new products and then to get them manufactured, because when you're in Shenzhen, you can find a factory that can do the high quality tooling that you need to do at the scale that you want and do it right away. But they can also get you all the supplies for that thing, like literally down the street, because that's a benefit of Shenzhen. They make everything there, including the screws and the glues and the the metal and the chips, all that is just there. So it really cuts down on cost of production, where even if you were to build something in the United States, you'd still have to import a lot of stuff until we decide we want to make it all here, which we're not capable of at the moment. But because of this, like, a lot of our products go over there, and then miraculously 6 months later, China invents the same product. So it's like, and they don't, of course, pay any copyright or anything like that, or they're stealing the IP. That's been known for a while. And so that's a big problem. And so the other thing, of course, is China wants to take over Taiwan, which is kind of aimed at 2027. If they do that, we lose all the chip manufacturing through TSMC, who makes chips for Apple, Qualcomm, a lot of companies, AMD, which is why TSMC has built a fab here in the United States, and Intel's building one here too, to kind of get away from that, because then that's a national security issue. Then you lose all your chips, right? So the idea, of course, is to bring back jobs to the United States. And there's been some mocking of, like, do Americans want to go work in a factory and all that kind of stuff? I don't know. It's a mixed bag. It's not like working in a factory, would be slave labor, because you'd still have to pay U.S. wages. The difference is, of course, you have to pay Americans way more than you would in China. But it's not even just that. This was mentioned by Apple this week. It said we literally don't have the capability to do this. Like I just mentioned, everything with Shenzhen, like they were saying how, like, you can go to Shenzhen and be like, find people to do this for you and run these factories really easily. In the United States, you don't even have the talent here to build these systems out in these tooling factories. And then you still have to hire all the people to do this, which is a whole other thing. And then you still have the supply issue of bringing all the various components, on top of the fact that this would take years to do, right? So even if Apple wants to make their iPhones here, it will take years before that happens. And so that's a real problem for them, which is why, I'm looking at the stock right now. So for Microsoft, for the month, is up 4%, right? So they're actually doing okay. In fact, today they're up significantly. Apple for the month is down 13%, because Apple's much more vulnerable to this, because over 50% of their profits come from the iPhone. Microsoft has very little hardware. So their business is Windows, it's Azure, it's AI, it's services, Microsoft 365, Surface and Xbox. But that's such a tiny sliver of what their profits are. So they're not going to be hit as hard. But Apple is in a really precarious situation right now. So I don't know. I feel like this will probably go on for months. But we'll have to kind of see.
It's also worth mentioning, real quick, it's worth mentioning, well, tariffs don't apply to software, right? This is quite literally physical goods.
Yes.
Yeah.
It could. Europe has threatened, the EU has threatened to do just that, had the United States gone through with its tariffs. But now there's a 90-day pause. The EU, the European Commission, has said it too will pause for 90 days. But there was threats of, and of course in the UK, you have their safety laws that are going into effect. We're also going to be basically a tax on US technology companies. And so the US was protesting that. It's pretty complicated. It affects a lot of things. I think it's funny, to get a little political, that when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, it was the Republicans pushing for free trade agreements. First was NAFTA, then it was the Free Trade Area of Americas, the FTAA. Although Clinton picked it up and signed NAFTA, and the Democrats shifted from a working class party to the business class party. And all of a sudden, it was all free trade. But back then, those protests with NAFTA and FTAA, I went to them. I used to protest with this stuff. I went to Quebec to go do it. But it was environmentalists and union groups protesting it, saying that it's going to be bad for the environment because you're moving factories to countries that didn't have regulatory systems that the United States had. So they were going to go overseas and basically pollute because they didn't have any laws to not do that. And it was also going to take working class jobs here because it's going to be cheaper. So all the factories shut down. Where I live in Worcester, there's a lot of factories that are no longer operable. And so we were all complaining about this, and Republicans were all for it. They were making money on the companies, and they pushed all this. It started with Reagan. And now it's backwards. Now Trump, who's technically Republican, is trying to undo this by breaking the entire world order and bring jobs back to the United States, which you think the left would have been happy about, but of course they're not, mostly probably because of his methodology. And now Republicans, though, are becoming the working class party. It's really bizarre. I get the criticisms of his execution of it. It is chaotic and looks insane. On the other hand, that may be kind of part of that strategy, right? I just mentioned they put a 90-day pause on because allegedly 70 countries want to talk. Well, that was kind of part of the goal of all this, was to get these countries to take notice. And same with China. I don't think softballing this topic was going to do anything. That said, it's playing with fire, but this is what happens anytime you're going to have any kind of, I say revolution in quotes, but drastic change, which people on the left have argued for revolution for many, many years. But it sounds great in paper. It's fun to throw your fist up in the air and wear a Che Guevara shirt. But at some point, were that to happen, it's going to destabilize the economy. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be unemployment. There's going to be inflation. It happens all the time, right? So there is a downside to making drastic changes, that there has to be some sacrifice. And that's what's happening right now. And now all of a sudden everybody's getting a little squishy. It's like, well, do you want change or not? I at least give the Trump administration credit because they're doing just everything that they said they were going to do. None of this is coming out of left field. It's like, well, this is what people voted for. So I'm like, let's, I guess, do it. I didn't vote for it, but everyone else did. So let's go through it. So we'll see what happens. It's been very interesting, but it could be really bad too for the economy and jobs. I just saw a report today that more people are worried about losing their job today than they were during the pandemic, which really says something about how secure people feel. So it's definitely scary stuff, but I don't know. I think cooler heads will prevail. It will come through this, but for a couple months, it could be a little bit tough. So
yeah. Okay, well, on that subject, we should move on to our last topic of the day, and that is the rumor that Microsoft is planning some more job cuts. So to give some context to this, earlier this year, Microsoft already announced 2,000 performance-based job cuts, which took place back in, I want to say, January, February timeframe. And then in the last couple of years, Microsoft has cut around 10,000 jobs in total from 2023 onwards. And that was, of course, from as a result of the massive hiring surge that a lot of tech companies went through during the pandemic, where they essentially overhired and then needed to shake off a lot of that extra employment that they no longer needed. And now the rumor from, I believe, Business Insider is suggesting that Microsoft is now readying up another round of job cuts, this time aimed at middle managers. And so the report says Microsoft wants to increase the ratio of coders who work on projects compared to non-coders, and Microsoft wants to also have more people report to managers, according to the report, which would allow Microsoft to manage a similar number of employees with fewer managers. So I believe this is a sort of trend happening in the industry now, where these companies in general are trying to reduce the amount of middle managers they have. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, I believe this kind of started with another controversial figure, Elon Musk, who isn't a fan of middle management. And to be fair, I'm not either. I've seen a lot of companies, I'm sure we all can relate to this. If you work for a lot of companies, they have a lot of middle managers and bureaucracy, and it gets very hard to do anything. And so they become hindrance to productivity, where you can sort of empower more local leaders and groups to make these decisions and do things. So I think it started with Tesla, or Elon Musk, and he's applying, using these tactics with Doge. But the next company that did this was Meta, with Zuckerberg, who's turned into a Elon Musk light and is trying to, bring masculinity back to corporate life, which I thought was really funny to say, because it's just like, dude, you're so fake on everything. It's just like, I don't even know what that means. It's like, I don't know if real men have to go proclaim that they're being a real man now. It's like, it feels like you're trying too hard. But they did this at Facebook. The specific goal was to remove and cut out as much middle management as possible. I actually think this is healthy to do. I know it sucks, people losing jobs. I don't want to make light of that. And it's even within the US government, they're doing this and people are losing their jobs. And there's no way to, sugarcoat that. Real lives are being affected. That said, the problem with bureaucracy, whether it's government or corporate, as soon as you form a group and you create management and you create these little hierarchies, their first goal is to make sure that they exist and that they protect their little fiefdom. There's never been a group that gets created in a company or government that's like, all right, our job is actually done here. We don't need to be needed anymore. You can lay us all off. All right. No one wants to do that. Everybody's job is super important. And so we talked about this with like operating systems. You just keep adding stuff to them.
Mhm.
And at some point you're like, is it done? Why do we keep adding stuff to this? Well, what more do we need? And it's the same with government and corporations. At what point do you go, don't we have enough middle management and bureaucracy here to do stuff? Maybe we should cut back. And so Musk famously goes through with a chainsaw and just like, is pretty brutal about it. But I think it's kind of effective. And sometimes you need to do that. Like, I don't like seeing people lose their jobs in government, but the US government, federal government, it's massive. Like, at what point does it, like, do we never cut back on it? It just grows forever. Like, do we really need any of this stuff? Like, they've already laid off a lot of people. There's not chaos in the streets yet. I haven't seen, there's no revolution happening. Like, life has gone on, so it's like the stuff can be done. So Microsoft seems to be falling in line with that too. And yeah, I think a lot of companies overexpanded during the pandemic, and so they're still figuring that out. But I personally don't like having a ton of middle management.
Sure. Yeah. Except for middle managers who love it. Like, yeah, please, this
Sure.
is great. We're all important. I should say, yeah, so this report says that these cuts may come as soon as May. I do think it's a bit unfair when a rumor sort of arises from stuff like this, because for the people who work at the company, it's a bit, it's not very reassuring, because it's like nothing concrete, not been announced internally. It's like, you go to your manager, hey, have you had anything? And they probably haven't. And like, I have no idea. So everyone at Microsoft, especially those of you who are middle managers, are probably going to be a bit on edge for the next month or so, I imagine. And if you are somebody who doesn't write code at Microsoft, you're definitely going to be feeling a bit nervous, I think.
And even if you write code, right? We're talking about AI that's supposedly
true.
going to
Yeah.
affect those jobs. So though there's disagreement there that AI may help them versus replace them. But
yeah, well, I do find it interesting that the report says Microsoft would like to have less managers so that more people report to like an individual person, which, could be being assisted with AI now, right? It's hard to not make the link to AI here, that these layoffs are not directly related to AI, but I think we're going to progressively see more and more of these companies sort of go to an employee or a manager and be like, use AI to help you. You might be working harder now, but AI is there to assist you. And so, it's like a balancing act, I guess, but it's not super great. But what are you going to do? There's nothing we can do sitting here.
yeah, I mean, but we all know this issue with Microsoft too, that when one group wants to do something, they often run into blockage from another group, or it poses on their, that's what we do. You guys don't do that. And so that's always been an issue with Microsoft, including with Windows Mobile and Phone, where they ran into cooperation issues and the whole company wasn't on board. Yeah. And so you have these individual groups that then try to protect themselves. It's kind of infuriating. There was a really good clip that's going around of Jon Stewart's podcast, and he has Ezra Klein on, who I really enjoy. And they were going through, it was a Democratic supported bill that was passed to expand, I think it was fiber optic or high-speed internet in the United States. And yet states had to apply for these grants where they could then use the money to build out. And they went through the process of what it would take to get this grant. And you could see Jon Stewart losing his mind about the bureaucracy and the amount of proposals they have to do in the back and forth. It's totally insane. And that's where government is, right? So you have this in corporations, though, too, in businesses where people want to make a decision and they can't. They go up through all these layers to get it approved. And it's just like, I don't know, it's pretty infuriating. You can't move fast as a company when you have too much management and bureaucracy in the way. And if you want to be lean and be reactive, you got to have the right people in the right positions, but as few barriers as possible for operation. So,
yeah. Well, I think that just about does it. Yeah, we got no more topics for the day.
Sounds good. I guess we'll do the Q&A now with the audience. As always, we do those live, but I don't know, maybe someday we'll start incorporating some of them into the
this is what the email's for. So if you are listening and you do want to send us a question that we will include in the episode, do email us at podcast@windowscentral.com. And from next week, if we have questions, we will have a little segment here that we will sort of go through some questions that we think are interesting enough. So yeah.
There you go. Otherwise, follow me, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky. You can look me up. I'm not going to give it the addresses. It's too much.
It's so hostile.
Yeah. You can, Zach, same thing. We're pretty easy to find. Our photos and stuff are pretty obvious. So there you go. But as always, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. Take care, everyone.
So yeah, if you do have any questions, now's the time to throw them into the live chat and we will hang around and do our best to answer them. This whole time, this Surface has been erroring out on me saying I need to be logged in, even though I am clearly logged in. So I'm going to try and fix that in a minute. I might disconnect briefly, but when that happens, I'll be back. So don't go anywhere. I'm not going to do it just yet. I'll let you know when I do it, but we'll answer some questions first. If there are any of those. So I just want to see if it will log me out or if it will keep me connected while I'm re-authenticating. That would be fun.
Oh, I forgot to talk about. I'll talk about it next time. It was that Android tablet, the Magic Notepad.
Oh yeah, I remember. You finally got it?
Yeah. I love it.
Nice.
But I'll talk about that next time because it's just kind of cool technology.
Question: any updates on the Surface Laptop 7 with 5G? You covered this at Windows Central earlier. Yeah, no updates. Microsoft said this summer. So probably not for another couple of months at least until we see that start shipping.
Oh, the 5G laptop?
Wow. 5G Surface Laptop, yeah, which is Intel only for some strange reason, but is what it is.
Yeah. And we may not see it come because of these tariffs.
Yeah. Zach, do you still use your Robo and Kala laptop? No, I do not. Since the Snapdragon X stuff, I've moved on from it. Yeah, the Robo and Kala was a fantastic tablet when it was out. It was the HCX Gen 3. It was a beautiful tablet, very similar to the iPad Pro in thinness, and display was gorgeous. And it was, it had the wireless keyboard detachment thing, which the Surface Pro 11 now has. So it was ahead in a lot of ways, but that device is a bit old now. I think that 2023, I want to say, maybe even 2022, when that was current. So it is, gross. Yeah, I'm no longer using it, but
we're so spoiled.
I know.
This laptop is 6 months old. It's gross. Get it out of my sight.
Come on, X Elite was just such a big step up over this HCX.
It really, yeah. And to be fair, Intel's Core Ultra Series 2 is also really impressive, actually.
Yeah.
But I would still go with Qualcomm. Sorry, Intel. You're close. You're getting there.
I like the names under each of you. Is that from the new software you're using? Yes, this is the built-in software name tags. I can change those, but I can't currently because, like I said, it needs me to re-authenticate for some reason before I can make any additional edits. So I'll do that in a second, then we can try and...
Yeah, by the way, shout out to the person who supplied this software. It's
Chris.
Way better.
Yeah, we talked about it before. But when Skype dies, I'll definitely mention Chris and Social Live again because it's great stuff. Question: Paul and Richard from Windows Weekly are going to Build 2025 conference in Seattle next month. Are either of you planning on attending Build 2025? Decision's not been made yet. Microsoft, to my knowledge, hasn't even sent out invites, or at least proper invites, RSVPs. So we're sort of waiting on that. But we'll see. We'll see. It's always fun to go to build. It's not always necessary, I think, is probably fair to say. But it is. We do find value in it, especially when it comes to meeting up with people in the industry and talking with people who work at Microsoft, people that work at different blogging sites, as well as sources who live in or around the Redmond area. Any idea on the mini surfaces? I don't know what you're asking. An idea? Yes, they're a thing. They are an inch or so smaller than the current surfaces. It's powered by Snapdragon X. And that's pretty much all we know about it. And maybe a slightly updated design on the Pro with more uniform bezels. It's kind of all we know, I think. Will Microsoft ever produce a gaming-only OS for PCs? We've had this conversation before. I don't think so. I think it's more likely to Windows will just have different modes. So it'll be Windows Home and Pro. But if you are running it on a gaming machine, you will have a different interface and a different sort of UX for that kind of device. For a handheld or for a gaming PC, you'll be able to configure it so Windows boots into a UI that's controller-friendly. And is better optimized so that it doesn't have many apps running at startup, and it won't. When Windows do pop up, they'll pop up full screen because you don't really need things running in windowed mode if you're using a controller, stuff like that. I don't think it'll be a dedicated Windows gaming edition. Does the Pro 11 Intel version have an anti-reflective coating? Yes, it does. The Intel versions of all the recent lap Surface devices, including the Pro, have anti-reflective screens. Qualcomm versions, for whatever reason, don't get that luxury. Do you ever see Microsoft adding call and texting to Windows? What prevents a laptop or tablet running Windows to have
no?
Because
they would say phone link.
Yeah, no. So Windows used to have this back when the Windows Phone was a thing. It was in the tech stack that Windows Desktop could support a phone having its own phone number and making calls via cellular. That was ripped out of the OS in some time I want to say 2019 or 2020, something like that. As soon as Windows 10 Mobile kicked the bucket, they sort of started ripping that out of the operating system. So they clearly have no intention of doing that. They would have kept it in otherwise. They did have all that technology in there at some point. They've ripped it out, and so no, I don't see that happening. Phone link is what Microsoft wants you to use. So you set up a phone number with an Android device, you link it to Windows, and the phone link service handles the phoning and texting aspect.
Copilot now hooks in through phone
and
link.
Copilot, yeah.
So you can do texting through Copilot. My only issue is in the settings, it's saying to use my Z Fold 6, but I'm on my S25 Ultra, and it doesn't let me choose.
Yeah, there's a trend in Microsoft design right now where they don't let you delete or turn off things in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Why? Let me unlink it from here. It's like it genuinely infuriates me that there isn't a delete button or remove button from phone link for devices you've linked to it. Oh, it's just so frustrating. Why? They want it to work automatically, but it never does. There's nothing magic about it. Let me delete it. Have you considered a goodbye to Skype episode like a signing off on your final Skype podcast? Probably not.
Yeah.
we don't want to go back to Skype.
We're not that attached.
We'll probably mention it when it shuts down, but we won't be doing another episode of Skype unless we absolutely have to. Oh, sorry, I meant about their launch in regards to the small services. So the plan is that they are supposed to be announced next month, but obviously with tariffs, we don't know if that's going to go ahead. The tariff situation may have thrown a wrench into things. It may cause them to be delayed. Microsoft may need to raise prices across the board before it can introduce devices that are supposed to be cheaper. And so, yeah, there's a lot up in the air right now, but as things currently stand, the plan is to announce them next month. All right, I'm going to try and fix this authentication issue. So I'm assuming, ideally, it will just log me out, log me back in, but Dan will stay live. I'm not sure if I need to be here for the live stream to continue, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. So give me a sec. Let's see if this works. Okay, so clicking it doesn't. All right, let me refresh. This will be fun. Oh, right, I'm back. Did the stream end? No, it didn't. So that's good to know. Dan can just be here without me.
I'll just talk politics and economics for hours.
So
Anyone, Bueller, anyone.
Yeah. So I mean, the problem with Skype is that Skype used to. If I dropped off Skype, then the stream was done. Like, so it's good that it's no longer dependent on me. Thank you, Social Life, for being very good. But now I can mess around with all this. So hang on a minute. So look, for example, we can change things like this. If I send that live, we should now look a bit different, and we can also, let's see if I can find it here. So in the future, when I actually get used to this software properly, no, that's not where I want that. Why would that be there? Okay, no. Okay, no, I can't do it that way. Well, I've kind of messed this up, but you get here. We could do this, and so this big sort of window could be like a web page or an image of a device that we're talking about as we're talking. So there's a lot we can do with this software, which is fantastic. We can have it so I'm in the corner for some reason and Dan's full screen. Yeah, there's a lot you can do, and so I just sort of need time to dive into it and just learn the ropes, I guess. Even animated you and Dan's images shrinking while you did that. Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's super smooth. It's way more advanced than Skype ever was. so yeah, that's pretty cool. Why is Microsoft not pushing 5G more in their products? They, in fact, seem to be doing the opposite. Why might that be? Microsoft, for whatever reason, has always considered 5G an enterprise-facing feature. They're not super keen on it in regards to consumer versions of Surface. The Pro 9 and the Pro X were the exception there. But a lot of the time, if you cast your minds back to like the Pro 5, for example, the Pro 5 5G was very much for the consumers, for the commercial side of things. The Pro 10 5G, because the same deal, it's commercial only, and the Pro 11 5G is actually, is there a Pro? I think there is a Pro 11 5G for consumers with Qualcomm. But yeah, in regards to the laptop, for some reason they're keeping that very commercial focused. They seem to think it's a commercial feature, which I know Dan disagrees with wholeheartedly. But
yeah, so the thing with 5G, obviously, I'm a huge fan of it. To be fair, OEMs have tried pushing it to consumers, but being honest, it just hasn't sold well.
Yeah,
there's some hurdles in the United States. Specifically, it's pretty difficult to get affordable 5G for a laptop. Like when I go overseas, I could buy an eSIM and it'll be like $5 for 3 gigs, and I can use it for like a month. And it's just like that's great, right? That's like pocket change. But here, a lot of times you have to have like something added onto your plan, and it's like $20 a month, and it's like a thing you have to go through and set up. It's a year, contract. It's gotten a little bit better. You can find deals here and there. You can get some eSIM stuff there, but most people don't know about that stuff, right? And so I just don't think, Wi-Fi is in a lot of places. And so I think for consumers, they just don't need it as much. It is true, though, enterprise, you see more of an uptake for it. So you start to see, even though I would say even that's declined a bit, but every company, HP, except for Dell, actually, I don't think, HP, Lenovo, and Microsoft definitely offer a bunch of their enterprise stuff as with 5G options. Lenovo is probably the best at it. Then I would say HP. The thing with Microsoft is it's always comes out like months later after the device. They never have it launch at the same time, which is really kind of strange. But yeah, it's just I wish more people used it, and I wish it was easier to get a plan here in the United States. But it's just not,
The only reason I haven't been using PhoneLink is the lack of RCS support. Now, if iOS finally adopting it, it is the only thing that I feel is lacking with the PhoneLink app. Yeah, I think I guess I don't know how this fully works, but I've been using RCS on my phone, and I send messages through PhoneLink, and it's able to relay them. But on the phone, it says I'm using RCS, so maybe so is PhoneLink not sending? I don't know how that works, or I guess maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is working with RCS. I don't know. I'm guessing PhoneLink isn't storing the data in an encrypted state on the device, which it probably should be.
Oh, I didn't even see the news that ChatGPT has added a memory feature now.
Was that announced today?
No, apparently yesterday.
Well, they'll all probably add it now. Copying Copilot. Dad, do you have any new mechanical watch?
No.
You do not. Have you bought Longines? I don't know how to pronounce that.
No, I don't, but they're a really great company. They have some really nice stuff. They've been going deep into their catalog from the 20s and 30s and stuff and remaking them, which is really awesome.
Kind of sucks to see people pulling up iPads with cellular anywhere, and me with my Surface here having to hunt for Wi-Fi or turn on mobile hotspot and waste battery. Well, there are Surface PCs with 5G, and there's also Windows PCs with 5G. You're not stuck. I guess if your device doesn't have it, then it doesn't have it. But there are options in the market for a always connected 5G Windows device. It just can't make phone calls. It will receive, carrier text messages if you're running low on data, for example, but it is not a thing that you can make phone calls with. So what's this about Copilot OS? I'm guessing you missed the actual episode of the podcast because that's what we talked about an hour ago. So rewind it back. You'll find it. It's somewhere here in the VOD. But we talked about it earlier in the show. I have favored LTE for my Surface device in the past, but it's an additional cost to get a 5G SIM or eSIM, and I'm mostly either in a Wi-Fi zone or can hotspot from phone when without, which is rarely. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I am almost always connected to a Wi-Fi network, and in the scenarios, the rare scenario where I'm not, I'm happy to hotspot from my phone. PhoneLink, especially with a Samsung phone, makes it super easy to just get that set up through the Wi-Fi menu in Windows. Couple of clicks and you're connected. It's just not a big deal. And the Galaxy lasts long enough that it can hotspot me for 20 minutes, half an hour, or however long I need it while I'm going from point A to point B. And yeah, no real problem.
Yeah, that Samsung feature definitely. Samsung phone link feature, I should say, definitely goes a long way.
Dan, what do you think about Johnny Ive allegedly working with OpenAI on devices?
Yeah, I think it's not a slam dunk. Ives, his legacy was more for older stuff, and so it remains to be seen if he has some of that same magic. I would say cracking what a wearable kind of AI device does is hard. Obviously, we've seen attempts at it already. but it's hard to compete with a screen in your pocket that already does all that. It's that what we've seen so far, like pendants and things you wear that you just kind of talk to and record stuff around you. I think that has potential, but like those are kind of already out there now. So if they're just going to do that, then it's a lot less exciting. So it'll look nice, I'm sure, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, that probably just about does it for Q&A. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next week, probably on Thursday next week, at our usual time. So follow us on the socials. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.